because y'all have a lot of stuff going on, and you're thinking about anything but the classroom. You want to go home, so.
Will we tack it on to another?
So, yes.
Okay, I don't want to lose the date.
No. And then, so January 25th will be our next one. And we'll make sure that gets published. The seminar is free. You can invite your friends or whomever wants to be here. What we're doing is we're providing, but if you want continuing ed units, if that's something that you need or want, that's going to be $300. And you'll pay that directly to the university. And when we get towards the end of the course, I'll give you that information. And part of it's strategic. I don't want you to pay and then you drop out, then you expect me to reimburse you when I didn't collect the money. So I have no way once you pay, I don't have any control over that, right? So we'll give you that information towards the end of the class in the spring. I know that conflicts are going to come up, so we'll work with you if there's like 2 meetings or so that you can't get here. We're recording. In fact, we're recording now. We're going to put it in the Google Classroom, and you can watch the video. So if you're going for the units, it requires 60 hours. 20 of it is the seat time that we're doing coming to the seminar. We're going to give you assignments in the classroom that will get close to 20 hours, and then we're going to ask that you deploy these strategies that we're talking about in your class as a lab, and we're gathering data from that, and that's the other 20 hours. Okay? So if you miss a couple of classes, we'll let you make that up via the video and do the homework and participate in that way.
King, I hate to interrupt you, but I'm good at it, apparently. 20 hours of seat time here.
Yes.
Then 20 hours of lab time?
That's what you're putting the practice, the strategies together in your classroom and seeing the results.
And then where's the other 20 hours?
20 is homework.
Okay.
And how many units are they?
4. But 300, it's a little 300 change. Like $78 a unit.
I don't know where that was when I was teaching.
So, we made an announcement. We found that we were supposed to meet on the 14th, but we already have a conflict with that. Apparently, they want to celebrate Christmas around the
Christmas break. Yeah.
So, we are going to take that date and move it to another time, which we'll figure out. Our next meeting is January 25th. January 25th is our next meeting. So make sure you write that on your agenda, because I wrote down September 11th, and that's not right. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Steve Thornton. I'm the coordinator for beginning teacher support for Madera Unified. And Madera Unified is the lead educational agency for the induction program, so I also run the Madera Induction Consortium for MIC. And so we've met, some of you have met familiar faces, and we've done induction orientation and a couple other things. And if you have MIC questions, boy, now's a great time to, or at least after we're done. Happy to talk about MIC if you want to. Happy not to talk about MIC if you don't need to. And then Jenny Taylor, former high school teacher at Central Unified, trained as a time to teach classroom management consultant, and she will be leading most of our sessions. I'll come when I can, but she's the primary on this, and she will be running the classroom and looking at the assignments, that sort of thing. So, any questions yet? Bob, you got a question?
Yeah.
Already asked my quota.
All right, let me give this over to Jim.
So, like he said, I was a high school teacher for 25 years. I was telling Rebecca that I thought I'd be that teacher that they drag out, you know, at 80, telling you you have to retire, because I truly loved what I did. I coached for a while, and then I ran the AVID program for a little while. If you're familiar with AVID at all, most amazing thing I ever did. Does anybody know what AVID is in here? No? So it's an acronym for Advancement via Individual Determination. But of course, nobody really remembers that. But basically what it is it catches the kids that have gone through the cracks. So not the kids that are in the AP classes and have parents that are super involved, and not the kids that are in special ed and get some support. It's for the kids that just kind of are good students, but nobody's there to push them. The kids that want to go to college, but they don't really know how that path is, or how to access college, or scholarships, or anything like that. So I was in a training one time, and they did something with Avid, and I went out for a year because of my illness. When I came back, I was like I wasn't used to not doing stuff constantly. And so I restarted the Avid program in Central Unified. The coolest thing I ever did, like absolutely the coolest thing. Because you basically become a life coach for these kids. It's not just academics. You take them to colleges throughout the state of California. We added a little bit to that because, you know, our kids tend to not leave, right? They don't leave the mountain, they don't leave the valley, they tend to stay. And so I was like, we gotta get these guys traveling. They need to see what the rest of the world is like. And so we took them to, first one was New York. We took 60 kids to New York, planned it all ourselves. We were absolutely idiots for doing that. You know, 60 kids, and we wanted to take them on the subway. And even though we were divided up, you know, in smaller groups, you wanted everybody together. That was a nightmare. And then we took them to Boston, and then we took a group to Paris and London, and then the last group was Italy. And just seeing things through their eyes was the greatest thing ever. And we had a 99% acceptance rate to college. That was back in the exit exam, and we had 100% and we did it for 10 years. And so it was just such a cool program to watch kids succeed. You know, you basically facilitate. That's really all it is. They become family, they push each other. And so a lot of the stuff and the way I teach is very Avid. I mean, when you're trained in it over and over and over again, it kind of becomes who you are. And I'm glad, because I think it molded me into the teacher I was. Sadly, I had to retire early because of an illness, and I retired and then started to get a little bit healthy, and I was like, okay, I need to do something. This isn't working. Like, I'm not healthy enough to teach 5 days a week, but I need to do something. And I knew early on in my career I eventually wanted to teach teachers, because it's a love. Like, I loved teaching. It's a passion. I'm sure you understand that. You guys are coming into it at a very different time in education, but for me, it didn't matter what they tried to tell me from above, like all the requirements and all that. All that really mattered were the relationships for me, because I felt like if the kids knew you believed in them, they would do anything for you. And I mean, it worked. I definitely was not the best, most efficient teacher. I never took roll, and the attendance lady called me all the time. You know, Jenny, I'm going to take you outside and beat your butt because you haven't turned in your, sorry, you know, every day. So, I mean, I wasn't efficient, I wasn't good, I'm not much of a rule follower, so most of my principals just dreaded when they had to deal with me. But I loved the kids, and I think you guys, some of you have probably been teaching a while. If you haven't, you will. It's a love, it's a true love. And regardless of what people tell you now, I mean, we heard it back then. What do you teach? Oh, I teach high school. Oh, God, I'm so sorry. You know, or you say I'm a teacher, period, and they're like, oh God, I'm so sorry. But really, I never felt that way, ever. I couldn't imagine doing anything else. And so, one of the things I always said is it's a passion profession. It's why we got into it. You know, most of us got into it because we love kids. Some of us were not great students. I was a terrible student. I slept through high school. I'm pretty sure I cheated through high school, I don't recall. I was not a good kid. I was an athlete, so I got through on a lot of that. And then I got to my bachelor's, and I didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't know how to study. I'd never been taught how to study. I'd never been taught, like, how to take notes. So, I mean, this was a whole ballgame, different ballgame for me. I couldn't get through on personality and teachers liking me. I think that didn't work. And so I did graduate with my bachelor's. And then my master's and my doctorate, I had learned study skills from when I was an Avid teacher. And so I became a great student. But that, I mean, I was old by the time I learned that. So I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway, I understand the struggle, you know, and I'll understand a lot, you'll find out. So if you want to like share or vent or whatever, I can assure you I do not communicate with your admin. What you say is, I'm a teacher, I never wanted to be admin, ever. And I wouldn't have been a good admin anyway, because if a parent came in, I would be very blunt. but that's not something I ever wanted to do. And the reason I got into this was to help teachers, not to help admin. So if you ever have a question, or you want to vent, or you want to scream, feel free. I'm deaf, so I can't hear it anyway, so we're good. We will be going through stuff, and I'm trying to make it all practical, not stuff that you probably already know. But of course, there's going to be some stuff that crosses over. But hopefully, if you can leave each session we have with a nugget or two, you know, I think that's worth it. And a lot of times it will motivate you, or hearing your peers talking will motivate you too. So I think it's a rich thing, and I think it's a really cool thing that Steve has done. This is the code on Google for you to access the classroom. And the classroom is where, I mean, you guys know how it works, but I'll be grading anything you turn in. I will usually write comments either in the note part of it or on your paper. Depends on what mood I'm in that night. And if you turn something in and you haven't heard from me, you know, feel free to message me. You know, sometimes life gets in the way and I may have forgotten. So
You must use a personal Gmail.
oh yeah.
And is that connected to this at all, or?
Is that what the QR code is?
No,
That's a-
no,
that's
that's
a
just a
feedback.
form to fill out for.
That's a
Afterwards.
feedback form.
Did everybody get that yet? Do what? Oh yeah, no, I got you. You were a good student. I wrote on whatever I had. You see? Okay. So Steve had already said who we were, what the workshop's about. So we've changed this almost every year that we've done this, because we've found that some things are more applicable than others. So we're going to be talking about a positive classroom, which sounds like, well, no kidding, but there are some things that you probably don't even realize comes into play. And even for me, I'm still learning stuff. And, you know, I never really thought about the fact of how air quality affected my kids. I knew they all had asthma, but I didn't know how it affected their days. So that stuff, positive instructional environment, classroom expectations, that's a big one. And that's something you're going to hit hard when we first get back. And we'll probably, we won't even have it before we get back.
It's resetting next time, yeah.
So we'll have to hit it hard when we come in, but that one's key, really key. Increasing student engagement or rigor. I think a lot of times we have that kid that is the overachiever, or the kid that is really smart and just squirrels around. And they can be your worst nightmare because you can't keep them busy and keep, you know, the kid that struggles busy. So how do we do that? And so this is a thing that we'll talk about. It's hard. You know, you're juggling, you know, SPED kids and just kids that are low achievers, and so it's tough, and that's all on you. Like, you might have a department that helps. The reality is when you're in the classroom, it's you. So we'll talk about that. Homework balance, you know, taking time for yourselves, because I know some teachers take it home, take it on the weekends, take time away from their families for this, especially young families. That's not what you need to be doing. And we'll talk about how we can manage that. Collaborating with special ed. How many people in here are special ed teachers? Just you. Oh, you're going to be our voice for some of this.
I'm new to special ed, so
You what?
quite the voice. New
Right
to
on.
special ed, so it'll be quite the voice. I
Right
guess.
on. That'll be perfect, because I think there's not an understanding necessarily of how regular ed teachers should be working with. And I think a lot of it for me was, although I ended up teaching special ed my very first year, this was before you had to have a credential in it. Yeah, that was fun. I taught RSP, and I didn't know what I was doing, so, and my department chair didn't guide me. So I just kind of did what the English department did, but a little bit slower. And I thought I did a good job, apparently I didn't. And so I understood IEPs, but that was about the extent of it, right? And nobody really bothers to tell you, like, what exactly is an IEP and what goes into the IEP? Like, why am I even consulted at all? And so we'll definitely talk a lot about that. And then accountability and motivation, which for Steve and I think is our favorite. Because there's a lot of accountability, but there's also some really cool things we can do that is built into your day that will help you in preventing really bad, poor behaviors. So this is what we're doing now. We used to call it, I don't know, we've changed this 4 or 5 times. And this is what we've landed on. So simply by creating a more effective classroom design can improve a student's performance by 25%. Just your design, not just what you have on the walls, right? And not just how you have your desks arranged, but there's so much that goes in. Some of it you have control of, some of it you don't. So why not with what you can control? Do it. And we're going to talk a lot about that today. Well, I'm not going to talk about it, you guys are, because we're going to be doing something with it. But these things are what go into play. Obviously your layout, right? Where your carpet is, how your desks are set out. Do you do groups? Do you do traditional? Why do you do it that way? Well, just because that's how I've always done it? Or is it because you've got a method to your madness? Clutter can cause anxiety for kids and you. I was the most cluttered teacher. I had TAs and they'd walk in and they'd go, Miss T, can I organize your desk? I'm like, if you do that, I won't know where anything is, so no. And you know, it was one of those, Miss T, can I organize your, supply closet? Sure, knock yourself out, I didn't have that in me, I didn't care. I knew where everything was, and that was really all that mattered, but it made them nervous. If they're coming to me and saying, can I organize for you, obviously it made them nervous. So I should have taken a hint, and I didn't. Colors, I don't know if you've ever thought about the colors around your room. The wall colors, what you do with those colors. What school was it that inherited the red walls?
Torres High School.
Torres. Red walls. Like, who thought of that? Clearly that was not
Chowchilla
somebody.
High School too.
Do what?
Chowchilla High School too.
Oh yeah, they're very red up there. Or over there. This is up.
Well, their
Here.
mascot was the Redskin, right?
And it still is.
Chowchilla High School. They got to rake from that. They're now the Tribes or something like that.
Oh, did they change it?
Yeah, but they had to because the state was going to take
I
their
was
money.
gonna
Right?
say.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if
A
it.
little bit derogatory. A little bit. Air quality, we just said something about that. Temperature and climate. I think a lot of us just operate, right? You just operate. You don't, if it's a hot day, it's a hot day. You deal with it. Like, I never put a lot of thought into the fact of how that affected my kids. Or the kid that goes home with no air conditioning, so they never really get good sleep. And then they come to school, and sometimes air conditioners go out. And what that does to them mentally and physically. And so we're going to talk a lot about that because, I don't know, it kind of blew me away when I really sat down to think about it. I mean, we're in the valley. I mean, we're above the valley here, right, the mountains, but if you live down in the valley or if you have kids that come, like at Minarets, I know a lot of kids come up from the valley. You may eventually end up teach down there, so all this stuff will come into your head and you're going to be like, oh my God, I never even thought of that. Acoustics. I can relate to this now because I lost a lot of my hearing. And when I was doing my doctoral program, we would go to Phoenix, a city I very much hate, and because it was always hot and it was always dirty. So I never thought about how that really affected me. Like, I really did not like going. And we had a professor that every time she talked, she turned. And I realized I was struggling, and then one of my classmates was like, I have to talk to you. Like, I'm deaf. I have hearing aids, I'm deaf. And she said, every time you turn your back, I can't hear you, and reading lips is a huge part of how I cope. And I thought, oh my God, I never realized how much I rely on lip reading because I don't wear my hearing aids because I've lost them. And so, like, it's hard for me, and I never realized it. You just cope or you try to piece it together. So that is huge, and it never occurred to me. Like, for my kids that probably have hearing issues, I mean, you think about it, you have a class of 25 or 40, and you're bound to have kids in there with hearing disability. And some that probably have hearing aids, but that can't afford them, or need hearing aids but can't afford them, especially up here. We have a lot of poor areas up here in the mountains. I used to live up here, so I say we. I lived in Raymond for 10 years, and I know, sad. And then acoustics and lighting. We had some teachers in the last class that liked to do mood lighting, which is really cool, and I think it has its place. I would have loved that, but what about the kid that can't see? Now you've taken away what very little light they have, and they're supposed to therefore read or write. You know, it's something you have to consider. Not that you can't do it, but when you can do it and what's appropriate. And that's stuff you're going to have to come up with, but we're going to talk about how it affects them. So what you're going to do right now, so that I stop talking, is you're going to be given a stack of articles. You are not supposed to read them all. Okay, you're going to be responsible for one article, and what we're going to do is basically share out. But we're going to do a little more sophisticated than just, you're going to stand up and share out. So what you're going to do is, I'm going to give you one of the articles. You're going to read your part, come up with takeaways from that article. You're going to collaborate with another teacher who's read a different article, and you're going to talk about each other's articles, and then you're going to come up with your takeaways and put them in one big poster. That way we don't have to all read the articles, but we're covering all the topics, and it won't be nearly as boring as you guys listening to me talk.
Oh my gosh.
Does that make sense to what you're doing? Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So he's by himself, so somebody will have to take him under their wing.
I'm so lonely.
Yeah, the solo man. Let me grab a pack so I can tell you. We'll probably need 1, 2, 4. Sorry. We're going to need 4 of those.
So each pair is putting their takeaways on that.
Yes. So when you read your article, you're going to come up with your takeaways.
Individually or?
Individually.
Okay.
And then you're going to come together with another person, and you're going to brief each other on the article, and you're going to put both of your takeaways on one piece of paper. And it'd be great if you put like some abbreviation of the article that you read so that we're not all lost when you share that. So you're going to do, it has the first page, well, the first article.
So what?
You're going to be doing the first, so you're the first one. And then, Mr. Peru, I haven't learned names yet,
They get
so
so messy.
forgive me. You're going to do the acoustics, which is the second article.
Oh.
Bigger chair?
You'll do flexible. It's like my favorite thing. I wish I would have done this. And you will do what? Clutter. Are you? Oh, I am. I've gotten better as I've gotten older. So this kind of works out, because then everybody has more. You're going to do the lighting and color. That one. Yes, right? You want one? We can do margaritas.
Seating arrangement?
You will be, yeah. You're ahead of me because I can't even turn the page. You are going to be this is red quality. And then you will be the next one. Oh, that is one. So why don't you split that? You guys
Air
can,
quality is yours and yours and centrality.
yeah, you guys will split that so you can decide how you want to. Like you could do the first two and she could do the last two. Or however you want. 'Cause that's the end of the articles, I think. wish I'd known, I would have done exactly what
Heat doors or?
right amount of water. Cause like I've been looking for these articles so long, to try to like, I'm trying to do it more like, because it keeps it going.
Sure.
It's less. So have you asked Trish if I can see what she does?
Sure, we can do
I just wanna see, cause I think we're both trained the same way,
Yeah, but what you're doing, what she's doing, they're not.
completely different. So what's it?
I think it's a piece of rubber from the playground.
Oh, yeah. They bring it in.
So like my dogs do. Are you gonna head out?
Don't want to forget anything. Since I was using my computer or my cords, you know, get to Madeira and go, oh,
Yeah. And you left it all the way up here.
right? One time we had a meeting. Where was it? Up here somewhere. When we first came, one of them came from Gold Valley, and she left her laptop, and I'm like trying to catch her, and couldn't. And so yeah, went all the way in there with her laptop. Had to go back to Webster Elementary the next day and give her her laptop.
So today, I'm driving Kathy's car because she got a brand new car Thursday. On Friday I threw a light. The day after she left.
The brand new car,
Well, it's not brand new.
or the one you use? The one you use, or the
The
one?
one I'm using is hers.
And that's the one that threw the light?
Yeah, the second day. So she works in the recovery. So she can't very well deal with the dealership down front. So I said, I'll do it. I'm retired. I can do this. They looked at it, ran this thing. Okay. Anyway, the part's coming in tomorrow, but we had a lot of arguing going on between the Ford dealership and me. So I'm driving her car, and I'm going down Boulder. You know, everybody's going about 50, that's the speed limit. And this lady's in the turning lane, out of nowhere, whips in front of me and stops. The light's green, just stops. I slam on the brakes and the horn, I'm back, I'm immediately looking to see if I can whip around. There's a car right there. I slide right up to her. She's clueless. I'm laying on the horn and she goes, sorry. She had no idea what she had done.
She was on that. That was cell phone.
And I almost died. Like I was going fast enough that I would have probably gone, you know, right through her car. And I was shaking up all day.
Really?
It was bad. Because you know that you're going that 50's really fast at driving party. And I mean, there's a bunch of us.
I was driving with a whole family and a trailer over to the coast, north coast, so we're north of San Francisco. And all of a sudden, the car says, you're too close. I slammed on the brakes, I'm thinking the trigger's gonna go off.
Oh, yeah.
But just as we were about to hit him, this little take off, and stop at the traffic.
I was hoping that she was. I didn't know what she was doing.
She's on the call.
She must have been. And then she had no idea what she had almost done. Like she thought, well, I hit her green, and she was just, I was being angry. And I tried to catch her, because if we'd gone to a light, I was gonna roll it, you know, and say, listen, do you know what you just did? Like, you have no idea. You would have killed me, possibly you, and probably the people behind me.
No, she had no idea.
No, no idea. It took me several hours, because I was already shook up with everything else. So what does Trish do?
We talked about, last time we talked about discipline at works. And,
Discipline of the students or yourself?
and particularly as it relates to the 3 to 5 heavy hitters that we might have in your class, that what strategy you use to help them working, and when you come up with a plan. Involves the counselor, involves the principal, involves the community, involves the parents. Where we talk about some policies and strategies for So things that we do in class can help manage the class while at the same time lessening the stress on the teacher. One of the things we discovered is that Google has the ability to automatically post and then automatically say no more assignments are accepted. And you can set it. So you can do some warm-up in the first 5 minutes of class and turn it on so that 2 minutes before the bell rings, the assignment populates. 5 minutes after the bell rings, enter in the time.
Oh, nice.
So then you say to the student, you're going to get this done, and you're going to do this is here. You can wait. And she said, can you make it with platforms? You don't grade them all. You just random it. Right? So if you do 5 days, I'm going to grade Tuesday and Friday this week. Okay. 3 weeks later, you change the grade from 5 max to 1 max. So 2 things are going to be putting on 1 max. So now all of a sudden you have a target policy. It's automatic. And you never know that you really know. And when it's on a timer, so you're not doing a 15-minute line but 5 minutes. Right? But you can keep that. So you waste it.
That's nice.
We have a student in the teacher of science that's talking about kids coming 45 minutes later in traditional class. And he's commenting, he doesn't understand the use. So he says, well, you can make that up, you can want something new, you can do this, or this, this, and this. What we're trying to say is, so what Trish said was, you don't loosen up, you tighten up. And what we're really trying to do is differentiate between the lazy kids and the kids that don't. And we're going to make it harder for you to be lazy. In other words, if you want to turn, you return this assignment that was due on Friday. We have all kinds of code policy that says you have to keep it. I'm not sure that you know what you're going to need to do, so you're going to turn this assignment into Monday plus this extra. You didn't get that right? You're going to do this assignment and this extra plus this extra. The kids like, shit, I just do it on time. It's too much work. Or you turn it back to the house. The reason is like the first time because it's easier
You know, she was known for being, well, the kids were for her, but really just firm. And I was not. And I ended up stressing over stuff.
So that, we talked about that. We did talk about some of the stuff we do with being calm, proximity, moving around the room.
So that's done.
That all mean, she had,
I love it.
also, so there's some different things. And we're going to have, we have, so the other TSM, we do a whole unit on AI.
Oh,
And data is your friend.
when do they do that? I'd like to go to that.
AI is happening, I think, it's in January, in February, is the data is your friend. So one of the things we found is that, especially first year teachers especially don't know how to look at data and how to support teaching. And so we learned that how to analyze the NWA assessments that we're using, what does a task look like, how does that tell us, kind of go from there.
I'd like to see that one too, just because I've been out of classes. So I'm not as familiar with all the tests right now.
But we're going to look at AI and how to develop lesson plans.
Yes, that's what I want to see. I mean, just, not even that we cover that, but that I can, or I guess we should. But when I meet with teachers on their own, that I would know how to help that. You know what I mean? Like, that's a lot of engagement right there.
That's well, if you increase engagement, then you decrease crossing paths. The question is, what do we do about these two kids that are just not
So that's where you go, you get put that team together, that you got the study team.
Well,
you know.
exactly. But for the kids that's coming to school full-time, there's all kind of consequences that happen in my own classroom. When you get through that, then you still have to deal with the school. It's not only you that doesn't need homework. It's actually, I'm glad you said that last night. The standards of your classroom, and whatever you let your kids do.
When you say
You're
that,
letting these kids
you've always
come
heard
to
that.
school. What about us?
But you know what I, later in my career, when I realized, first of all, that I couldn't do all that I was trying to do, right, physically. And so I realized that when they do turn in crap, I'd give them the opportunity to continue to work on it, like in an essay. Because like, okay, well you missed the first edit, you didn't do it. You're still gonna have to do it. Because you're not gonna turn your paper in until you've done it. And at that point, you're still gonna dog.
What you had is this system now where we do peer evaluation.
Yeah.
If you come to class and you're not prepared to with your stuff, you better go sit on the table for yourself. Well, everyone else actually gets how.
And it's more fun to have.
So there's some strategy to apply.
That's awesome. It's stuff that I did, some of it, but I don't even think of that anymore because it was natural, right? She's, that's pretty awesome. She was nailed. She's just, you couldn't pick somebody better than to be doing that. Especially with new teachers who, I think the climate is so hard for them now.
And that's what we talked about last night, was that the behavior things that we're dealing with now were anomalies before the pandemic, but are now becoming commonplace.
Yeah.
Particularly the rudeness and regulation.
You know, my sister, she's not a teacher. She's always talking to me about her teacher's face. And she's saying all the ones about the guns and the teachers being. And I said, you know, I think that was a huge contributing factor to why I didn't fight. When the superintendent, Sissy Soup said, you know, you need to take care of yourself. Because I could have written it out, and I would have maybe bounced back and would have had several more years. But I had a student that was nervous right after we got back to Italy. And when I got into the classroom, I had a group of kids that were affiliated with the murder. And it was the very first time I ever had a kid stand up and say, "you" to me. And I was like I've never, but I had a co-lab teacher that had been running the classroom. And this kid said that to me, and I was like, okay, well, you're going to have to go talk to the vice principal, and that's just how you're going to speak to me. And I never shut the kid out, but this kid scared me. And I realized that I was changed forever by his mother. And, you know, I never in a million years, when conflict happened, no kids were never. That would never happen. But I wasn't so sure when that happened, because the mother of the murderer was in the news saying, all kids carry guns, they just don't know how to use them. And just the fact that there was an understanding of that among whatever community made me nervous. And I'd never been nervous ever. But I also knew I wasn't strong enough. If somebody challenged me physically, I wasn't strong enough to do anything. And it was a scary thought because I'd never been so helpless. But I would love to watch her because I've always looked up to her. I mean, I think she's amazing. Both of her kids, because you had her daughter Alex, she would like, one minute she's dressed uber professional, like for art interviews or whatever, and then the next day she's wearing like crazy, and then you see her doing announcements, like she was all over the place. She didn't conform to anything, but she was a phenomenal student and a great kid. You what?
Is there just someone who's like a slow, like, I always mix up.
I've also got a Sharpie.
Oh my god, right? I can find some updates too, so that's fine.
Yeah.
I would make sure like everything's fine.
You know,
The kid asked me, how do I? Hang on.
you have to sing it.
I have to sing it then. They're like, what? Because I'll say it to them in the room.
That's how it was with Mississippi when I was a kid.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Because it has a beat to it.
And then the water slide where you put back the tea, I have to do that all the time. I used to be a really good speller, and then
Oh, I worked in atrocious.
it was just so instinctual.
I was in kindergarten, first grade, I was in an experimental class. Where there was whole theory. It was like this weird, it didn't last long.
The whole language.
Just like whole, I don't know, could be whole English, I don't know, but it was, they didn't collect.
Yes.
They just, it'll come, so I had literally actually explicit instructions.
That was the whole language, and it was such a
The
crash.
few students that were my peers that did really well, their parents did phonics, hooked on phonics with them at home. It's the only reason why they did well.
You're right, it didn't last long.
Mine did not, oh, it was bad. And because, that's why I had the same teacher for kindergarten and first grade, because they're like the school system, we were the pocket, like the test that we did.
Really, thank you for that.
You impacted me for
I think I
life.
was a test dummy,
You impacted me for life. Appreciate that.
in a bad way.
Yes.
Yeah, I was teaching them that kind of that, and I was English. And then they went through a whole thing where they took away lit. We were only supposed to teach, we had to teach out of the textbooks and not teach novels. And I'm like, so desperate.
It's just
Yeah.
baffling, some of the things like,
But
where did they come up with this?
I don't know, I think some of the think tank people, like in Sacramento, come up with it. But they haven't even put it in practice.
Exactly.
Because like, how is that right, that you don't, I mean, I understand, like a lot of kids are like, spiritually, this is stupid. But there is a lot to be taken from it, right?
Not just that, there's a lot of our everyday life and everyday language
Yes.
that utilizes it without us really knowing.
Or references
The
it.
reference, exactly.
And the kids don't even realize how much.
And it's like once you learn what the reference came from, now you understand the reference.
Yes, and the meaning. I
It
mean,
has more meaning.
one of the things that, the only way I got kids hooked on TikTok, and they usually said, love it, because you might bring it up, they're like, oh my god, was all his sexual references. And like, even in Romeo and Juliet, and the kids are like, oh, so now they're looking for it. Some of it was not quite, I didn't want them to catch all of it, but
Well, I learned something from in your basement, so I was getting the random articles and stuff, yeah, I'm like, huh, I don't know, what the expression horse is at. Where it literally came from a Roman.
yeah, way.
Because it was like a tangent, oh, how can railroads have a certain, why is it always 4 feet, whatever inch, in like within railroad ties?
Why?
Because it trails back to, why were you even doing that, right? So, the Romans first had these chariots and stuff, so the old roads that covered wagons,
Yeah.
it's the same ruts. So why reinvent the wheel? Why didn't this
No
like
pun
this,
intended.
right? Like this works. It's not gonna break. We can keep it at this length and we're good. And then it just kind of
Just went through.
well, where did the Romans come up with that? It was the size because it had equal horses.
It had to be the same.
2 horses next to each other, and they could literally 2 horses passes. That's
Oh my gosh. I've never, yeah.
That's
crazy, though.
I was reading about that. I was like, I just started cracking up.
It means so much more when,
You're pretty close.
I know.
I cracked up. I was like, one thing. And then I laughed because of how I came to that by starting with railroads and
It makes sense,
it all
right?
makes perfect sense. And I was like, huh.
But it built on each other.
So
I
not
know
only
two
is
people are
bureaucracy
so-
real and the thing,
Yeah.
I cracked up more. I was like, that's that's what I appreciate.
And then, but you know, when you tell kids stuff like that, then it clicks for them too.
Oh, yeah.
That means something to
Like
them.
a stereo? Yeah,
Okay, wrap it up.
I know, I got
Yeah. My shoulder is screaming. Like, they can't figure out what's wrong. Isn't that the story of my life?
You always have something breaking.
Always.
fill it and then.
Although, ever since I started, and then I started Pilates, getting farther. That's why this is so disappointing that I haven't been able to do it. But we did have a meeting or luncheon yesterday, and it was fun. They were all drinking margaritas, and we swapped cookies.
blockade.
And then tomorrow we're doing the same thing for the different countries. I didn't know that people in their 70s could be so good.
Learning flows due to
Are we almost done?
like sounds and balance.
You guys ready? No?
I took up all the time drawing that beautiful picture.
Well, it is beautiful.
Yeah.
So we'll wait a second. But I was gonna say they could go ahead,
Okay.
but I don't want you to miss what they're saying. They're getting all artistic over here. Are you guys not ready?
No, we are.
You sure? Okay. Why don't you guys start, since you're on that side and you're already standing?
Standing, perfect.
And then, the guys can hopefully write and listen.
Just stick it.
Careful, don't touch the elf, he loses his magic. They love them, so.
Oh, I know. I do not. I wouldn't. Yeah, I don't recommend it. Yeah. Okay, so our article, we got to share one, is air quality. So start off, basically the summary of the article, I love my shorthand here. So it has to do with air exposure, right? Pollution, all that kind of stuff, equals, increased allergic reactions to pretty much everything. Increased, upper and lower respiratory disease, so things like not just RSV stuff, you got like the flu, common flu, this time of year especially, it's pretty bad. I got hit with it pretty hard. What hit me the most, that connected, because I used to work in the hospital system, in cardiovascular stuff, is that it makes it so that you have a higher risk of cardiovascular problems developing. So there is potential, very real long-term effects of that kind of exposure. Right in here we only have one color, sorry. This very long thing right here, basically this is a thing, a company, an entity. Valley Air Pollution Control District's Real Air Advisory Network.
They don't have a cute acronym, huh?
They really don't, and they need one, so we should brainstorm that. They really, really need one. So there's basically, they came up with 5 levels of, how bad the air quality is. The only 3 that was mentioned are the 3 that really impact us. So if your schools they say it's a level 3, if you have asthma or students have asthma, no, they don't get to participate, they need to go inside. Because they're the most sensitive group. Level 4, exercise is not recommended. So if it's level 4, and that's for everybody, right? Level 5, you stay inside, everything's canceled, including PT.
And that's
There's been a lot of days of those too, haven't there?
not where we both teach actually at North Fork, so this
Oh, yeah.
actually doesn't affect us very much
You
because
mean
our
you're
air
getting
quality
smoke
is
from the
not.
fires?
Well,
We
now
do, but
we are at the moment, because we do have a prescribed burn that's not too
Yeah.
far away, but it hasn't impacted us to the point where we've had to cancel anything.
They're above the fog.
Yeah, but they've had fires come through there every.
we've
Yeah.
had fires,
Every 2
but
months.
on
But
our mountain.
it's not like down in the valley where there's
Trap.
so we're above, just
Yeah.
above the pocket.
The inversion.
Down there
rate.
they're not.
Mhm.
Right, so down there it's impacted
we're not daily impacted, only if there's a
Not
fire
right,
burning.
right.
So,
Right,
Which is
so,
next week,
which,
so.
yeah,
well, actually, we haven't really had one this year, so,
not yet.
yeah, so. we've
There
been-
was one actually, in August, but it may not have gotten your
It
area.
wasn't that, yeah, it was pretty small potatoes compared.
We had a
Yours
nice
is
winter
nice.
rainstorm to
We've
clean
had-
everything
Yeah.
up.
It was like, that's fine, no big deal.
Yeah. We're used to being evacuated, and our school is used for the fire crew.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, yeah.
So we're
Yeah, we
used
have
to
that
when a
massive
fire comes, we're
field,
not
so-
at school normally. We're someplace else, and then most of our families are evacuated from their homes. So it's like that kind of.
It's a totally different
It's a totally
deal than
different
down there.
world, yeah.
Yeah.
So when this happens, they talked about when sports are canceled, ways to keep students active, indoor PE activities, where you're kind of rearranging your classroom, pushing it all aside, and coming up with some indoor activities to do, but they don't really give examples of any activities. Sharing spaces, meaning if you have 800 kids in your school, having to rotate schedules with all the teachers sharing cafeteria or gym spaces for use, and being creative with that. Online workouts, so you might not have to rearrange so much if you have she has like a rug area or something. So that's this was an interesting one, I thought. They are creating fitness circuit training, and I don't know if any of you remember Curves for women.
Yes.
And they had the circuits, I believe that's what they're talking about, is having like the little stations and rotating. So having a fitness circuit at school somewhere, I thought that's kind of cool. School hallways, they were talking about some schools' hallways being able to do PE in them, and I'm impressed. Our hallways we could not do, well, we don't have indoor hallways, but that's pretty impressive. I don't know, anyone have a
Back
hallway
east,
that you could do?
When I lived back east, we had indoor hallways, and they
Yeah.
would do that. They would do like a fast walk, and they would have to go around.
Oh,
and
like
do
almost like a
opposite
track?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
That's more maybe of a
We
Midwest
could
kind of
probably
thing,
use something
maybe?
like that.
Or Los Angeles.
Yeah, or LA maybe, yeah. And then remembering that there are individual needs from like specific educational plans. So some people have serious, illnesses, that to know your students' individual plan to make sure that you're keeping them safe. And then informing parents for at-home activities. So making sure you're like posting it somewhere and keeping the parents informed of the level, so when they get home, they also can maybe help their kiddos stay safe.
Awesome. So
That's
I have a
very
question. How does it affect their behavior in the classroom when they lose their recess or they lose PE because of that? Like back east, when we couldn't go outside, we'd play like silent ball and whatever. And it was really fun for the first day. 7-Up, heads up, 7-Up. But when you have like a string of days, how does that affect their behavior within the classroom?
I mean, we had like one rainy day. Like, they were just, you could feel it was tense, and they like needed to get their energy out. And even like the other TK and kinder teacher and whatnot, like they'll bench their kids for like the entirety of
Oh.
the recess, like if they do something really bad. And I'm like, no, like 5 minutes tops, because these kids, like, they're gonna end up doing something worse off
They have
if
to
they
have that
don't
outlet.
have that outlet, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're making it worse for yourself.
Yeah,
Right.
not only are they're more anxious
Mm-hmm.
and stressed out because they don't have that outlet, but it affects them social emotionally as well.
Mm.
Yeah.
I've seen it time
Explain
and time
that.
again, especially up here when we get like snow and things like that. Nobody can go outside. Like us teachers, like we want to go out and stretch our legs and do things too, right? And I start to feel after the shiny of, oh look how pretty, it is worn off.
Snow
Now it's
hybrid
like,
girls.
okay, we're done. Let's do this because I want to go outside and do things, right? Kids are the same way,
Yeah,
and they'll start to get depressed and act out and things like that.
down the hill, foggy days. Those were awesome the first 2 days, right? We were like, sweet, we can get caught up. Everything can be done. We don't have, we'll be nailed. Second day comes around, you're like, sweet, you finish everything up. Third day comes, and you're like, oh my God. Like, it gets to be a drag. Like, even as teachers, because we can only run to go get breakfast so many times. That was the bad thing we did. But when you get back, you're still faced with no kids or maybe 5 kids.
Yeah.
How do you keep those 5 kids busy? Because you don't want them to just sit in front of a TV, which you end up maybe doing for a day. But you've still got all these kids who are just squirrely, and we get squirrely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, up here you guys deal with a different, animal about that, but it's still the same concept. How do we keep these kids, how do we give them outlets if we can't be physically outside?
Mm-hmm.
You guys were saying moving the desks, and
They said
but
rearrange.
then what? Like, what games do you have? Because silent ball's only fun, or but I was also a PE major, and I went to a conference at Cal Poly that do this really cool PE stuff. And there's a book, and I was looking it up. I think it's called Silver Bullets, and it's all activities like out of the norm. It's like balloon volleyball or on their knees, and then getting a beach ball and having questions on it. And they bat it, and then you stop the music, and whoever has it has to answer a question, or that way you keep their brain and their body busy. There was a thing called Snakes and something, and they had the big water noodles, and some of the kids were some kind of animal, and the other ones had these, but they couldn't get up, and they had to try to catch these kids going by, but you didn't have them running, because God knows they would go face first into something, but like they would be crawling, and the people with the noodles have to try to get them. Just different stuff that would utilize their muscles. I'm going to look that book up for that specific reason, because then you're going to become the cool teacher that didn't make the kids sit and do nothing, and your kids in the long run are going to behave better for you. And that's even high school kids. I mean, I brought out, I hated how squirrely my kids got, and so we made up games. We took one of those gopher balls, if you're familiar at all with PE equipment. They've got the little, they look like handballs, but they're really soft. And we made up a game called Corey Ball, because Corey thought of this. And it was basically like, we had we had a trash can at both ends. We just took the school, whatever one was there, and if it was empty, we flipped it. And they had to run. We were outside at this point, but they had to run and try to, they could only take 3 steps, and there were all these rules. But you could totally adjust that into a classroom, right? Like that corner could be one goal, that corner could be another. They can't get up. They have to be sitting, so they have to collaborate to pass the ball around to then be able to score. Different stuff like that, but you're wearing them out. And ideally that's what we want to do. And I would do it with high school kids too. That I wouldn't miss, I mean, high school kids are just growing up little kids, and they need the same kind of stimulation, so. I'll look that book up while we're doing this, but thank you. You can leave it up, and then maybe we'll just put the next one up on top of it, and that way if anybody wants to take pictures of it, they can. So let's go, Rebecca, you guys go.
Okay. It's kind of all jumbled together, so don't mind us. But I had the article on different seating arrangements that you can have in your class, and there are very, very many options to choose from. But the tops that they talked about were circle and semicircle, just because there's more interaction, more collaboration between people. You can see more kids in the arranged seating and rows type of situation that we have over here. A lot of times they talked about how depending on where a child is sat on the carpet determines kind of their personality that they adopt. And I see this totally. I've had a kid sit in the front and in the back, and they're a completely different kid when they're in different squares. So just finding that balance and whatnot. And they also talked about how
free seating and letting them just sit wherever they like is a red flag and not good. But I also kind of personally believe that there should be a little bit of choice in the classroom, and they should get to choose. So I was like wondering kind of what your guys' take on free seating is, only because like as a kinder teacher and as a TK kinder teacher, we kind of are like, okay, like maybe sometimes they can choose where they sit. We don't really have fully arranged seating when we're sitting in our groups or our tables or whatnot, but like as a high school teacher or middle school or whatnot, like what your perspective is on free seating and whatnot, or how
Well, I will tell you, my wife
down.
is a TK preschool coach.
Okay.
So what you just described, and exploration time and student-directed learning. High school, you're gonna sit here. I don't wanna sit here. Well, you can sit here or in the security office. What choice do you wanna make?
Or you could say, like, the other thing is you give them the illusion that you're getting choice, right? But you have it totally thought out. So you're like, well, you can sit here or here. It's your choice. But those are your only two options.
Yeah.
And really, you've thought it out. You're not haphazardly saying you can go over there. But you make sure it's not near their girlfriend or their best friend, right?
Have you guys rearranged as a basis of behaviors and found that when you sit certain kids in certain places, chaos, but you separate them, and so you had to have a seating chart to make that happen, yeah?
Plus it helps for attendance too.
Right? And subs.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is when you could have a kid that is normally fantastic, but somehow when they get next to this other kid,
Oh my.
right? It's like Jekyll and Hyde. And you don't, if you're a new teacher or it's your beginning of the year and you don't really know these kids, like you don't know until something really
You'll
bad has
learn.
happened.
I usually redirect them. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just use to redirect the kids. No, I think why don't you come in and talk with this friend today, so that friend can talk with this friend. And they're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And we just like.
And they're so willing at that age
Yeah.
because they want to make more friends usually. You can do it with high school kids too, but it's more of you might have to have a private meeting with the child and say, hey, look, that kid, she doesn't seem like, or she seems like she's having a bad day. Maybe you could help her. Other kids they may go over and make it worse, but at least you're trying.
Yeah. And then they just said to consider like IEPs and non-IEP type of situations, like kids with glasses, consider that, and all of the different things that you might not typically think of, but just considering, all of the hidden non-IEP stuff.
Nuances.
Yeah.
Awesome. When you were talking about free seating, I think one of the things did you have that one about flexible classrooms?
Yeah.
Okay, I won't get into it now. So yeah, and how many of you, is your classroom set up in rows? Yeah? How come?
Because I have 32 desks, and I'm not sure how else to put 32 desks. Can't put it in a circle. I mean, I could put it in a circle, but
Circle might be a little difficult.
put more circles inside of circles or something. I don't know. I just haven't. Yeah, hadn't figured out how to make that.
Sure.
I just don't have. I don't think I have room to make a big circle, but I might have room to make a little circle.
Well, you don't even have to do circles. Groups, pairs, right? Fours.
Yeah.
The other thing is you could keep them the way they are, but then for certain activities, you could bring them together in a group so that you're breaking it up. Just doing group stuff, if you do any group stuff. If not, we're going to encourage you to. But given the circumstances, and I think what a lot of teachers have a hard time doing is collaboration stuff is scary because you feel like you're losing control. And so that's one of the things we'll hopefully help you through on that is I want to encourage that because number one, it takes a lot of the burden off of you because you become more of a facilitator versus direct teaching, and you don't have to put as much, I don't mean not put as much because you do on the front end, but you get to be more walk around and be facilitator to make sure kids are working together, but they also learn a lot off themselves, off of each other. They actually learn more. I think, I can't remember what the quote is, but it's something like, when they teach each other, it's like 90% they'll remember, versus I think it's 20–25% when we're doing it. So that's something to think about because it makes it easier on you. Awesome.
So they also talked about light. The one things that I personally learned, a lot of the stuff in the article I already knew about light and how important it is for learning. But it shows that students studying in natural light perform 25% better.
Oh, wow.
And I thought that was a high percentage. And so when you're going outside and sitting and reading or learning outside, how much more they're probably getting out of that and you don't realize it, just because they're able to. I just thought that was interesting.
Did it talk about like the mood and stuff when kids go outside?
No, it talked about the mood with like the lighting in the classroom. If it's more dim, they don't retain as much. It talked about like words or letters, or when you're doing something, what colors what colors are better, give you better attitude, versus red is more like angry, which is why you said red walls, whereas like the blues or the cool colors helps them relax and absorb more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason that fast food restaurants commonly use red and yellow, studies that have showed that it causes anxiety, which in a lot of people makes them want to eat more, but it also makes you want to eat faster. If you're in the restaurant, it makes you want to eat faster and get out of there, because
they're turning over tables.
That throughout our evolution have been colors that have been warning colors and colors that indicate danger. Right, so
that's awesome.
So you see McDonald's colors and Carl's Jr.'s colors and and Sonic colors. And if you think about fast food restaurants, there's a lot of red and yellow used.
Now I'm going to think about that every time I go
through. Used in restaurants.
You know that? Have you ever thought about looked around a doctor's office? There's certain colors that they use, and like there was a prison we used to have a slide about the prison. And they used bright pink, not the one that with the guy that got in trouble, the sheriff and all that, but like it was a juvenile hall, and they did bubblegum pink, and they found that the kids calmed down so much faster. I thought that's crazy because that's a bright color, But it was interesting. Colors are huge. I think somebody else has color. Does somebody else have color on this? No? We'll have to. We have a thing we're doing anyway, so.
Well, the other thing I want to just touch on is it says dim light reduces brain ability to collect info. So it makes me think about the teachers who do the mood lighting and how they're wondering why their kids aren't really, say ingesting the information, but retaining the information. Well, maybe they're just not, they need more light to help their brains. So it was, I just thought.
That's cool that they brought that up.
Yeah, the other part of the article or section of the article talked about fluorescent lighting and how it can create anxiety and depression. And I don't know if any of you had issues with fluorescent lighting. I personally have issues with fluorescent lighting. If it starts to go out, I get a headache. If one is burned out, I get nauseous. I get really nauseous, and I have to walk out of my classroom and say they need to come and fix it.
Or the flickering.
Oh, that's bad. And if anybody knows anybody who's epileptic, those flickering sends them into a seizure really fast. So, yeah.
It's also known that, well, it's known somewhere, I didn't know it, but that people who have like lupus, fluorescent lighting can set off a flare. And I had lupus, well, they thought I had lupus. But a lot of the autoimmune, the fluorescent is horrible for them. So that's interesting to consider. So you're looking at you can't be too dim in class because therefore the kids can't retain, but then you can't, the fluorescent lighting is not great either. All the time, I guess, really is the thing.
Finding that balance. Again, with everything else, finding that balance.
Yeah, exactly. Which is really fun because on top of having all the children, now you have to consider the lighting and keep that in balance too. But it's kind of fun too because it allows you creativity. And now you have reason behind your creativity, maybe. Did you guys get to say everything? Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. How about, well, you guys know you're not.
read how clutter affects the mind's ability to focus. So really it was that clutter is distracting. Every time you look at an object, it triggers a thought or a memory, or it inspires some creative, I think they give the example of, a water bottle, empty water bottle on your desk, and you're thinking of water bottle designs, and you just, you have those kids that go on those rabbit trails. So the more clutter, the more distracting it is. Our brain is predisposed to order over chaos. Clutter releases cortisol in the brain and creates stress and anxiety. Researchers using MRI and other researchy things discovered that clearing clutter results in better focus, better ability to process information, and increased productivity. And decluttering supports improving and maintaining a healthy mind, body, mood, and brain. So.
Don't we feel better when we declutter sometimes? I know as I got older, I started decluttering. I had stuff in my closet, not in the closet, my garage, from my student teaching. Well, I student taught as a history teacher, and I'm an English teacher. I taught English for 22 years. But my first 3 years were history. I don't know why I thought that I was going to use these Xerox copies off the purple ones that smelled. I don't know why I thought that I was going to use those ever again, but God, I couldn't throw them away. What if I did? Right? And so I finally got to the point where I was like, okay, really? Everything's on computer now. You can get rid of it. But that decluttering was actually cleansing for me. And it's hard to do as a teacher because we're in that mindset of, but what if I need it? Right? And if they tell you this, and it's true, we beg, borrow, and steal from everybody. Back when I was teaching, we still had overheads. And I had been told that if you can get access to an overhead, you keep it. Well, then I got access to 3 overheads, and I wasn't going to give them up, which is so stupid. How many different overheads are you going to get? So it is, the clutter itself, as a teacher, I think we're predisposed to it.
And I do notice with myself, if I have a decluttered space, I'm more apt to do something creative. Or I can think outside of just all the mental load of looking at everything around me. So I can relate to it, for sure.
I had the flexible classrooms, and it said that it can boost academic performance, reading, math, and writing, improve 16%. Welcoming spaces had an startling effect on math, and then I got these out of order, but anxiety-provoking subjects, it makes them feel more like they're invested and comfortable in it. And then it gives kids more control and responsibility. Makes them feel like it's their classroom as opposed to your classroom. They have an investment in it.
Did it say anything about choice with the flexible classroom?
Probably.
Well, I'm not saying specific, I'm not setting you up. I'm just wondering because I know that choice empowers kids, right? And so if we provide choice, well, flexible classrooms, they're talking about those big exercise balls, allowing kids to sit on those. Or they have, I thought this was the coolest thing, I'd never even seen it. It was chairs like this, but they're on rollers. And so then, therefore, when you do groups and stuff like that, you don't have to, it's just creative. You can be more creative. They had them on these stools. They have these stools. I think I have a slide that'll show it, but there's all these different ways of doing it. And some of it, obviously, our schools would have to approve and therefore pay for it, which is a whole other thing. But maybe one at a time, you bring things in. You get something at the 5 and Under store or something. It's just an idea. I know that I had a pop-son chair, if anybody remembers those. And the kids would fight to get the opportunity to sit in them. And I'm like, it's a pop-son chair. But to them, it's different. And so it's cool. They broke a few pop-son chairs too, but just something to consider and start thinking about. And yes, I think with the flexible classroom, there's an element of giving up what you think is control. But you may actually find that you're going to have better control once the kids are more invested, right? They're not, I don't think we're saying don't change your seating arrangement or make a seating arrangement. I think that's all lies. But there may be times when you can have some of the flexible, maybe when it's free read, or you're reading something from your lesson, for your lesson, or reading outside, which that was you guys, right? The reading outside. I've often seen science teachers take a thing outside, or some teachers are forced to go outside because either the power goes out or something like that. And it's so cool to watch the kids because they have a whole different mindset when they're outside. The other thing is, as far as anxiety, I guess, and I'm not going to quote it because I can't tell you exactly where I heard this, but when a kid is able to make contact with like the ground, so if they're sitting on the ground, it's a, what is it?
It's huge, it's like you're connecting back to your.
There you go. That like there's therapy, it's a therapy in a way. Do what?
We watched a bunch of kids like last year, our TKers, and they were all having problems. I said, that's it, we're running back and forth on the soccer field. I'd blow the whistle, they'd run. Next thing you know, they were on the ground on one. I was like, this is great, this is fun. Their attitude was so different when we went back inside.
That's awesome. I mean, you know, even the high school kids, sometimes just doing their math, like measuring stuff and all that, outside changes completely, changes them completely, so. Perfect, thanks you guys.
Does anybody know where the restroom is?
Yes?
Yeah, but you might need a key. I don't know if they're on launcher.
So you guys are last, you wanna go?
Do we have a choice?
No, yeah, just stop that.
We'd like to go first after.
That was one of those, you don't really have a choice, but I'm making you think you have a choice.
Okay, so I had the classroom acoustics article. It was pretty interesting. It did mention studies, but there were no hard numbers. It said the kids that were in noisy areas didn't do as well on their standardized exams and their academic performance, and kids that were in noisier classrooms did significantly worse on those things. So no hard numbers there, but it did say that young kids, for example, when you're talking about young kids versus adolescents or adults, they have a much harder time with the background noise. They're more easily distracted. Not only are they more easily distracted and susceptible to the background noise, but they are not able to fill in the gaps like we are, because obviously we've heard a lot more, we've read a lot more, we've experienced a lot more, and so we can catch a few words and fill in what should be in between, whereas younger kids don't have that ability, and if they're not taught well in the beginning, they don't gain it as fast, and they have a much harder time gaining it altogether. They are also, if there's a lot of background noise, they're less likely to ask for help, for clarification on concepts that are being taught. So it's really important that we try to reduce background noise, that we enunciate, and as you said, that we face our students, face our audience when we're speaking. I'm fortunate to teach up in North Fork as well. We're in a small school. We are in a duplex that the other teacher beside me, my neighbor teacher, the sound really carries, so we are listening to the classroom beside us, but we are relatively small classes, and so we chuckle at some of the things that are being said in there, and they probably do the same, and so we can feed off of each other, but it's not too bad. In contrast to that, I lived in Lima, Peru for 7 years. The whole time I was a teacher and standardized exam consultant, teaching students to take the verbal portions of the GMAT, the GRE, the LSAT, and I was constantly surrounded by, if you've ever been to South America or in large cities in South America, or to Cairo or to Mumbai, it's just a symphony of horns. And really difficult to hear. Everybody's on their horn constantly. They don't use their blinkers, they just turn, and if they, or their mirrors, they just turn, and if they hear a horn, they know, oh, somebody's there. And that's real. So I've been on both ends of it, and definitely prefer the quieter classroom. We're fortunate we have a carpeted classroom, we don't have too many kids. It works out well for us. So when there's less noise, the students show great improvements in academic achievement, in speech recognition, even in attendance, and their learning behaviors are affected by it as well. And so that's the positives for the students. When teachers are able to teach in a quieter environment, obviously it makes for reduced voice strain. I mean, I had problems with my throat all the time when I was in Lima because I almost had to shout. Even when I was on the 10th floor, I was just being bombarded by noise constantly. And also we didn't have carpets in the classroom. It was all tile and hard walls, concrete walls, and the sound just reverberated, bounced around. So it was a completely different experience. So yeah, reduced voice strain, voice fatigue, and increased effectiveness in our techniques, and we can get around a little bit more as well. So it makes life easier on you. It makes life easier on us. It makes life easier on the teacher, and the students, and especially important with younger students who haven't learned to fill in those gaps as well, who haven't been trained to read lips. They don't have the life experience. Exactly. So yeah, it's integral that we control volume and face our audience and try to do everything we can to get rid of that background noise in the classroom. Awesome. When we were talking in Chowchilla, because it's a small town, right? And so every time a fire truck went by, Steve was saying, the kids are wondering, like, is that going to my house? Like, is it going to somebody's house I know? Because they've all known each other, kind of North Fork-ish. Yes. They've all known each other forever. And, that's immediately distracting. And then I know that, for me, kids would walk by if I had my door open, oh, what's going on? Where are they going? You're like, oh my God, every time, But in their world, that's important. Who's going to the bathroom apparently is very important. So thank you for that.
Hi, I'm Bob.
Hi, Bob.
I teach at Yosemite High School. We had a couple car alarms go off this morning, and two of my students were desperate to go check to see if it might be their car that had the car alarm going off. I'm like, you'll know your own car alarm really quickly, and you'll be able to pick it out. So if you don't know it's yours, it's not yours.
That was the first thing I found and unhooked when I got my car.
Yeah.
I probably shouldn't tell you this, but I don't even lock one of my cars. I can't even lock it because the door sags a little, and so like if a bus goes by or something, then it just sets off the alarm. Oh my goodness! So I just stopped. It's a 2010 Honda. It's not going anywhere probably. So, so mine was on the effect of heat in the classroom, and surprisingly, kids do not like to have their body temperatures increase drastically and then try to learn something. Apparently, this is not a thing. So as the temperature goes up, so do behavior issues, bullying, tempers, and what goes down are graduation rates, learning, the ability to function, the ability to sleep, which you do not want to have happen in class, but at home. There was one study that said, I believe it was, poor people are 6.2% more likely to not have air conditioning, and so their kids are more likely than to not sleep well at home. The number of Hispanics and blacks who were prone to not have air conditioning was like 1.6% more than the average. So it wasn't an appreciable amount, but still something to consider. Academic performance goes down, and then test scores go down. There are many studies, but there were very few numbers or specifics that were given in the paper. But that was pretty much it.
Well, in the ideal 68
That
to
was
74.
Yeah.
one of the few numbers that was
Yeah.
provided.
I think that,
No.
yeah, it's crazy how much it affects scores. I did have, that article didn't have it, but there was another article I had that showed stats. But the other thing is, a lot of things in education, we do have data, but a lot of times it's very subjective. And so it's really frustrating when they say, you know, increases, decreases, but they don't give you numbers. And we kind of need that data to process that ourselves. But I guess if we know, obviously none of us operate well when it's hotter than Hades, right?
It's cold.
So
It goes for cold too, because we've always had huge
Right.
air conditioning and AC problems. It just now got fixed. So for the last week, I've had air condition, or like a heating and air conditioning thing. And in 7 years that I've worked at North Florida, they've always had this archaic 1950s system.
Yeah.
So my room was on average 85 degrees in the summer, and it got up to 100 degrees.
oh my goodness.
So like, I know this subject very well. And we were very cold because it got like 30 degrees in my classroom. When I come in, it was 42 degrees in my classroom. And so we had to wear our puffer coats, and we had to.
And you're still cold.
And I have 26 kids in my class. And it was so funny the first week last week, I think this was our first week last week, that we had actual like function of it, and the classroom has ran the most smoothest. And I'm just sitting there
It's
like.
nice, everyone's like,
It's really
Night
distracting
and
to see your
day, if
breath
you
when
can,
do
so
that.
I mean, there's a
Right?
huge
Yeah.
validity to that.
You're afraid to breathe because you don't want it to change,
I
right?
know, but they were so, they have to try to keep warm, so
Yeah.
like, it goes both ways too. Like, they can't, they're so tense, cause like, I just wanna
That's
get warm.
true story.
So, yeah.
All right, so we're coming back on the 25th of January. We're going to be talking about expectations, procedures, standards, things that you can apply in your classroom, and how you mitigate the off-task behavior and make your life less stressful. And we're actually going to look at how much stress you're carrying and what to do with that and how to make it go away so that you can enjoy your job.
Oh, you guys can say, real quick before we go.
My chest, my daughter, and.
Here are some ideas.
So,
Oh, sorry.
You're going to put that in the classroom, right?
I will. I'm just gonna fly through it real quick. So here are some of the things that you could consider for the, what is it, the flexible classroom, thank you. But they, like scoop chairs, those were kind of cool, they rock. Anyway, that'll be in the classroom. And then we won't watch this video, but basically it was really kind of interesting. And then there's one, oh, this is a, so the difference is there's some data for you on temperature. 70, so the average, the good score was 72, right, 90%. That's pretty interesting, I think. Even if it goes up to 80, they're only at 72%. And the colors, when you see that, what's the first thing you think? Not with the furniture, just the colors. What?
Sour Apple Lifesaver?
Sour Apple. Jolly Ranchers?
Jolly Ranchers.
Nuclear winter?
Do what?
Nuclear winter?
Nuclear winter, if you know what that is. I don't know.
Slumber.
But is it shocking or relaxing? Shocking. Shocking?
It's a little bit shocking.
What about that one?
Yeah.
Bad?
Had a purple wall in the house once, nobody liked it.
Nobody liked it?
Yeah.
Somebody before it said there's just way too much purple there. And then soothing or no?
That one's good. I like
Yeah.
that one. No,
So-
it's not soothing. But
Ocean light.
Oh, you just like it.
closer.
But if you think about it, your first impression on those colors, you know, is what the kids see too. This is in the classroom, definitely something to consider when you're decorating.
It will be in classroom.
It will be in the classroom, it's not there yet. We were gonna have you do this, but we ran out of time. And we'll do this next time.
Yep.
So homework, this will be in the classroom, just be aware, there's an elementary video and a secondary. Make sure you watch someone appropriate. There's 2 articles, you'll read them, come up with 5 takeaways. And that's it. I would like to hear what your feedback is next time on, did you change some of the colors in your classroom because of what we talked about? Did you change maybe your alignment, desk how you set your desk up. I mean, think about things that you could change to make things more smooth for you.
Great.
And look for this to be in about 48 hours before we get it all posted, so.
Yeah.
I've stopped using
our
red pen.
answers
I didn't,
to
I haven't used red pen this year because I don't want to bloody up papers.
But there's some cultures, like the Hmong culture, that when you do use red pen, it is incredibly, I can't remember if it's insulting or.
I mean, I use it for the board, but not for corrections.
Yeah, because it's